Right. Hi, I'm Kamir Anya. My pronouns are they, them. I am a indie streamer, primarily indie games, but also do a lot of mutual aid, especially mutual aid organizing these days. Um, and I am, non-binary Jewish, disabled, neurodivergent. Oh, I'm losing my patter. I'm a queer, aries, non-binary, Jewish, disabled, neurodivergent stream. Oh, that's where I end it. Neurodivergent streamer. For my aro side, for the record, it's romantic. For my ace side, for the record, it's ego sexual and lithosexual. So basically, I don't know what the fuck the difference is between romantic and platonic, and tend to fall platonic. And if I am sexually interested in someone and they return this sexual interest, it disappears. Plus, it's all more hypothetical. I don't really want to be involved myself anyway. So that's a very short version of my ARA'sness. And well, I'll discuss the Judaism more later because I know I'm going to have to explain more for those of you who don't know the denominations of Judaism as well. So,
All right, I'm Lavosi or Lovo if you wanted a shorter version. Uh, I use she/they pronouns. I'm asexual, aromantic.
Oh no.
Oh no. And I
Tech
noticed that I
issues.
can't hear you. um, I don't stream as often as I would like to due to a lot of burnout because I'm also disabled. Um, But when I do stream, it's usually cozy games like Stardew, right now Fields of Vistria. Um, I play Sims 4 a lot, with a few other Sims games in between. My non-cozy games would be like Dead by Daylight. And I also really enjoy playing world building, especially historical world building games like Civ or Foundations or Kingdoms Reborn, stuff like that. Um, I well, we obviously get more into religious backgrounds, but I grew up Baptist but am now hello, the word. I am now pagan and Wiccan.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Definitely pro streamer today, apparently. Didn't forget to turn my mic back on. That did not happen.
It happens. It
Yeah,
happens for real.
is it even a real stream if there isn't at least one technical difficulty of some type?
absolutely. And apparently, um, I cannot type in Streamlabs at the moment because it signed me out. So I'm gonna have to use the Twitch chat to do shoutouts and things like that.
Oh dear.
Classic.
We'll get that
Classic.
sorted out ahead of the subathon tomorrow.
Probably a good
uh,
idea.
yeah, one would think. Welcome everyone. Now you can hear me. My name is Tai Wai. I am a gray airways, non-binary variety streamer here on Twitch. I'm also a PhD student in my other half of my life, and have interest in Arctic climate science, hence the Arctic theme on the layout. And I recently started this podcast because I run a Ace and Arrow group locally, and I've really enjoyed talking about all sorts of things like aromanticism, asexuality, amatonormativity, and all these things. And I felt like, there's not enough of this discussion going on here on Twitch. And being a part of the Ace and Arrow raid train this past, absolutely not enough discussion. Being part of the Ace and Arrow raid train this past June, I met so many wonderful folks who are, Aspec themselves and since then I've come to meet so many other folks that are ace and aro. And through this, I've made connections, and I think, I've got so many folks now to speak to about their lived experiences with asexuality and aromanticism. And hence, here we are in episode 7 of the Aspec podcast series, where we are going to be talking about religion and how it intersects with Aspec identities. So the first question today, and I think both of you have already, alluded to it in various ways, but what is your religious background and what is kind of the perspective you're going to be talking about from today? We'll start with you, Anya.
So I am a semi-observant religious atheistic Jew. Because Judaism is one of those few religions that you can actually be like heavily part of it while being in that atheistic agnostic space that I always go back and forth about. But it doesn't really matter. Jewish, like I say semi-observant because I would be more so if it wasn't for all of the ways that like it's hard for me to keep Shabbos when I live alone and need to make food happen, and I'm planning ahead is just not really a possibility right now. I would be way more observant again if I could be. But I like just signed up for my Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services to go and to potentially take part in this, like in reading Torah. From a denomination-wise, I grew up conservative. I typically consider myself traditional egalitarian, which means when it comes to the prayers and such and the ritual, it's pretty traditional, but in the way that it is very brain egalitarian, like men, women, and non-binary folks, all of the genders, we all kind of take on the same responsibilities. There is no oh my god, why can't I think of the word? There's no separation. There's a specific word for it, but there's no mechitza, there's no separation, there's no barrier between men and women. And my community and the way I see Judaism is extremely community oriented, very social action, very tikkun olam, which is fixing the world. And like the community I'm about to celebrate the high holiday with, for instance, we put our pronouns in when we register, and I've got enough time to know that I will be very far from the only person with they them pronouns. Which is wonderful. So that's the perspective I'm speaking of personally, but I will be speaking a little bit of the knowing friends who are Orthodox and Reform and different denominations. I will be touching on how some of that would look and where it would be either easy or hard in different denominations and what that might look like in Judaism.
Absolutely. I'm excited to learn because I know so little, and it'll be really interesting to hear your perspective on that.
Yes. Yay.
And Lovo, would you like to let us know a little bit more, kind of the religious backgrounds you'll be talking from, the perspectives you'll be speaking from today?
Yes, the main religious background that I'll be talking about today would be Baptist Christian sect of Baptism, Southern Baptist to be specific, so even more intense. That's what I grew up being. That's what my parents are still practicing. Now I am currently pagan and Wiccan, which I can touch on a little bit, but as a whole, it's obviously a lot more accepting of the LGBTQ community, so there's not a lot of, quote-unquote bad stuff to talk about in that sense. Whereas with baptism, there's a lot more to go in when it comes to definitely Aspec and other LGBTQ issues. But that's definitely my religious background. It's a wild one.
I can definitely appreciate that for sure. Personally, I don't have much of a religious background. I guess I was technically baptized Roman Catholic and maybe attended church once in my life, but I'm very much atheist myself and I don't practice religion. Thanks for catching that. All right. So, The second question I would like to ask is, in your experience, have you found religion to be accepting of asexuality and aromanticism, in your own experience? What has your experience been around this? And how do you navigate expectations of romantic relationships, marriage, and the inevitable questions about raising children that come with religion as an Aspec individual? We'll start with Lovo, perhaps this time.
Okay. Definitely the second part of that question is a huge one for me. But with specifically my parents' church, which is the one that I grew up going to, uh, they were never really, Southern Baptist. They were not very accepting of anything outside the norm, quote unquote, the allosexual norm. So it was always really hard, and ever since I was young, going to church, it was always one of those like, I do not feel like I belong here. I don't feel the same about anything that everyone else is feeling. Whether that has to do with sexuality, but also just religion as a whole. I was like, I don't understand why you guys are so hyped up about this, but okay. Um, but I always like, it was the trend, very my family growing up was very, white picket fence style of thinking. My parents are older, they were born in the 50s. They have that mindset of nuclear family. So, they definitely did not have children that follow the same mindset. My older brother is gay, and so when he came out, that was a huge thing. And then when I inevitably when I was in middle school, I told my mom that I was asexual, and she was like, it's just a phase, that whole thing. Like, you're too young to have sexual feelings. And I'm like, I'm a 14-year-old girl. I think I can. But, when that was that whole phase thing, and it wasn't up until recently where it was the sit down with her again and be like, hey, so I don't know if you remember this conversation we had when I was in middle school, but it's still exactly the same, but also there's more. I don't have romantic feelings too. She doesn't. It was one of those things where, she responded where it's just like, well, I mean, a lot of people have those feelings. And I'm like, no, they don't. Do you have those feelings? Let's talk about it. But we didn't get into that very much.
No.
Yeah,
kidding.
it's what I love. I love when my mom, I tell her these things, no matter whether it's about Aspec stuff or other things, and she's just like, well, doesn't everybody have feelings like that once in their life? And I'm like, no. You want to talk about that? Because that's not true, mother. But yes, along with that first part of the question, growing up, it was not a very accepting community. Now with like navigating, I'm currently engaged. Will be getting married in 2026.
Congrats.
So thank you. I'm pretty sure my partner's in chat right now too. It's lurking. But navigating all of that, especially with my mom has a huge family, and like not necessarily their side of the family, but mainly mine's. They're the nosy ones. It's the constant of, oh, I'm dating somebody that looks masculine, even though my partner is not. They go by every pronoun under the sun, whatever, and will be transitioning in the future. So it's like, I don't want to deal with that right now. So it's the constant of, how are you guys going to, like, when are you gonna have kids? You guys look like a normal allosexual couple. And I'm like, haha, little do y'all know. No.
In so many ways.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like, I'm just gonna give them the little white lies right now. And then later down the line, they can find out the hard way, because
yeah. No kidding.
It's one of the things where it's like, for peace of mind going into this wedding, I'm like, I'm not gonna deal with it. During my wedding, we're doing a hand binding ceremony. It's gonna be very pagan focused. And when I showed
Love
my
that.
mom the vows, basically, she was just like, well, why are y'all talking about like the cardinal directions and the seasons? Where's God? And I'm like, listen. And the way the way that I went about it was just like, well, didn't God create those things? And then that shut her up real quick, so it's pretty easy. It's so easy to get around that. I think I did have to make a compromise with her, and I had to throw God's name in there a few times, and she's like, okay, then I'm fine with it.
Wow.
And I'm like, what's a little bit of a white lie here and there? When it's not gonna hurt anybody, just makes everything nice and calm, especially on a wedding day.
It's a lot of sense.
Yeah, but it's that's kind of my experience so far and what's coming up, which is going to be a wild time.
Okay. So, my experiences with it are a little unusual because I haven't myself fought much with, like, found much issues at all with any of my identities and Judaism. I was in a very accepting community. I also didn't figure out the aceness into my late 20s. A lot of other things had come before that could have that if I struggled would have been issues already. I figured out the bisexuality and pansexuality and non-binary and thing after thing after thing. And I was been lucky that in my own community that hasn't been a problem with my parent. Well, my mom's disappointed that our line won't be continued, but more because she thinks that like there's a lot of awesomeness in us that it would be cool to put out more of that rather than any kind of like religious you should have kids. And since she didn't want kids until 30, thought that I would probably change my mind, which is a bigger conversation about kids because I do want them, but I want to foster. But I got the chance to learn. I went to a Jewish day school also, just heads up, from 5th grade through 12th grade. And then I went to Brandeis University, which is a fairly Jewish university and was a few classes shy of ending up with a Nedjus minor, Nedjus being Near Eastern and Judaic studies. So again, background on the Judaism stuff that is relevant and will probably come out. I have friends who would not have had such a easy time because like the woman I consider my twin got married at 26, 27. I want to say 26. Aw, Duke.
Thank you so much,
Sweet.
Duke. So kind of you.
Yeah.
Gifting a sub to Suni.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But like, so my friends who are Orthodox, there's a lot of different pieces to that, and they're expected to have kids, and they're expected to be married. So like getting married in her mid to late 20s was kind of a Shonda, kind of a she frowned on to be single as long as she was. And like she and her husband got married within a year of starting to date. I remember how worried I was when they got engaged in like less than 6 months, something like that. But luckily seem to be going very strong. Their kids are adorable. There's a lot of love there. But there's this push, and there's this push of you don't get like part of them rushing to get married was age. Partly it was to get out of her mom's house, out of her parents' house. Like that's a big piece of it. So there's these different pressures and pushes and questions about love and sex in those ones, especially where there is more push to have kids. And at one time, like I think the best reference for this one is Fiddler on the Roof. Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. And do you love me? Do I what? Like those conversations in some communities, like it's very rare now, but it does still happen occasionally. And there's kind of less of that emphasis in some communities still on that idea of love. So there's kind of a how do I word this one? Expectation of marriage and kids, uh, mixed with today's societal expectations of married for love, right? Which causes different things. Then, in some ways, there's less worry about the romantic side of things in certain communities still. Um, so the push is there for the kids, for the families, but not necessarily for the romance or actual sexual attraction. So, again, very glad I'm not in those communities. I also had to navigate being polyamorous or now relationship anarchist and all that jazz as well on top of it. But yeah, so it's one of those things where it does very much differ depending on where you are, what denomination, what community, where I never struggled ever. Um, because I had already it was a lot of steps to get to Ace and Nero. So that one I never struggled with. Especially since it turned out that I never ever wanted, biological kids. For what turned out to be dysphoria reasons. I just didn't know that for a very, very long time. Um, but yeah, so my background with it was pretty simple, but I know a lot of denominations where it wouldn't have been as easy.
For sure. Absolutely can understand that. So that brings us to question 2. Question 3. How have you handled any potentially conflicting views between, religious texts and your own beliefs around whatever, and especially with regards to your identity in your intersecting identities? We'll start with Anya this time.
All right. So, this is a very, very Jewish take that I'm about to give. I'm gonna have to give actually a very, very short. Should I talk through the ad break? Just to check.
Oh yeah, thanks. Maybe we'll just pause here,
Yep.
and
That's good.
I
we
get to
will.
tell a story.
Yeah,
No.
we'll wait till the ad break is
Yep.
over. Absolutely,
Yeah.
and we can, and then we'll get into it.
Mhm. Yeah. Also, did you
Duke
notice
gifting
Oh my gosh, so
10
many!
gift subs. You
That's
should.
epic!
That's so amazing. Thank
That's
you
so
so
sweet.
much to Amenesi,
Yeah.
Lavosi, Cozy Lind, The Grim Sleeper, Mick Liley, Wormy Glitter, Mirage Emporium, Adventure Lady 2023, Possum Gamer, and Lunar Dust. A few of those fellow Fruity Stream Team members. Thank
So
you
sweet.
so much.
Mhm.
Absolutely, Duke
Mhm.
slay moment. That is
Yeah.
so kind.
Also, Taiwai, did you notice that we got reposted by Aven?
I did not see that. I saw they posted a few of our
Yeah.
tweets before, but
Yep, they
that's
reposted the
amazing.
We Are Live.
Heck
Isn't that so
yes.
cool? Yeah,
They
I don't know
just
about you.
followed me the other day.
Yeah, me
because
too.
I'm like, oh,
And I'm
Yeah,
sure it's
they've-
because of this podcast. It's
Yeah.
freaking
of
amazing.
course.
They've been slowly following the folks that have been on this
Yep.
podcast.
Like, it's so cool that we're getting to do this and that we're getting the recognition from some of the bigger communities that this is a really cool thing. Okay. So, right, very Jewish take on biblical text and on Jewish law. This is a oh wow. So this requires a very Jewish understanding of the way we take our texts, at least in many denominations. There are denominations that take them much more literally, but this story comes straight out of the Talmud, of like our books of law, which we've got the Bible, but the Talmud is like the oral law that got turned into the written law. And for the record, just a little bit of what it looks like is it's typically on this manner. This person said this because of these things. This person said this because of these things. Here's this very specific types of Jewish thinking and types of looking at the Bible and types of looking at the specific literature. I'm pulling the things and interpreting the things. And here's where they differ and why. And sometimes it will end with and we go by this, and most people go by this. And sometimes we'll just kind of drop it there of, these are two completely contrasting views. So there's some denominations that look at it as if the written law, the Talmud, the oral law written down. So the oral law, the Talmud, came from the rabbis, which came from God, and that they should be followed literally. Many, many denominations, including my own, look at it much more as a example of what lawmaking through holy text and understanding should look like now, and it's more of a blueprint of how to do the same work in our times. So, this is part of why 2 Jews, 3 opinions. If you ever hear that.
I heard that yesterday, actually.
Yep. So the idea isn't that we actively have multiple opinions, but when we argue or we consider, we will bring out opinions that maybe are not ours, or we will consider like 20 billion different ones. Oh, thank you for the gift sub. But like we will bring in all these things, and the more Jews, the more opinions we're discussing, and more things we're thinking, all of those stuff. And we're, bringing the different things that influence us. Okay, so, right, lo b'shamayim hi. It is not in heaven. This is a Talmudic story that really explains, well, a lot of what I was talking about and where I'm going. And that I'm pretty sure is going to be extremely different from what Lobo says. Which is part of why I've stuck with Judaism and I'm still religious. So the story goes, there are 2 rabbis arguing over the kashrut of I believe it was of an oven. The direct context of what they were arguing over doesn't really matter. And one rabbi pulled out all of these different concepts, or rather, one rabbi, everybody agreed with this one rabbi. There we are. And the other rabbi, no one agrees with. But, so this rabbi basically goes, if I am right, let the tree show it. And the tree starts to fall. And, like, the other rabbi basically goes, what does a tree know of law? If I am right, let the river show it. The river starts running backwards. Yeah, it's a river. Like, I'm super paraphrasing here, but it's a river. Why are we looking at it? If I am right, let the walls of this building show it. The walls start to cave in, and the other rabbi basically goes, whoa, stay out of this. And the walls, it says, stayed where they were, neither falling nor raising, out of respect for both. And finally, the rabbi goes, if I am right, let God say it. And a decree from heaven starts to call out that this one is in it. And that's when the other rabbi goes, lo b'shamayim hi. It is not in heaven. Basically, you gave us the law. Now we interpret it. Now we work with it. You gave it to us. And it goes that the story goes that the angels asked God, went to God about it. It was like, how do you react? And God laughed and said, my children have bested me. And it really sets that scene of, in many denominations, it's up to us to interpret in our day, in our time. And the direct biblical text is there. It's important. But it is not the law. It is a basis. There's, it's where we come from. But like similarly, in my Jewish day school, we took a class where we discussed kind of the Bible as a academic text, looking at the multiple writers and the way you can tell one from the other and why there's multiple stories for the exact same thing. Like there are two creation stories right there in Breshit, right there in oh my gosh. In Genesis, sorry, English words for all these things is hard. I'm trying hard. I'm trying as much as I can. If I don't translate something, please let me know. But that's kind of the basis and the pattern that I've learned and lived with, and figured out how to make it work for me with where I can, trying to keep to the spirit over the, oftentimes the spirit over the letter for me. And especially as we move into, figuring out with disability, figuring out with all the other aspects also. But kind of that, like, I don't really look to the Bible specifically, nor do most of the people I know, because we look to the rabbis and we look to the current rabbinical discussions, and we look to the just the many discussions around it all. But the Bible is the guidelines and the basis that the laws are created from, with current context, and that changes so much and is so different from most of my friends and people I know in different religions. And again, there are denominations that are much more focused on the specific words, like back to the rabbis. But as a whole, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, 3 Jews, 5 opinions, and so on. So yeah.
I love that expression. When I learned it yesterday, I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But it
And
makes so much sense.
And it's one of those things, I remember, so I'm in a group on Facebook that's like, it's a place for non-Jews to ask Jews questions. So the non-Jews can ask, but only Jews can answer. And one person was asking, like, is that a thing we could take to other locations? Especially, I think it's something so beautiful about talking things through. And we had to be like, technically you could take it, but that's not what it means. It's not about coming together in different opinions. It's specifically about the way we argue and build together and disagree together and look at the different sides. And it is an extremely Jewish thing. And are there other communities it works with? Maybe, but not in any other place I've seen. So yeah. All right.
Thank you so
Passing the
much.
torch.
This makes so much sense, and I've learned so much even in, the last, 10, 15 minutes, because I must admit I know very little about any religion, particularly nothing about, Jewish faith. So really interesting to, hear your perspective on that. Thank you so much.
I'm really glad I get to take part in it. This was part of why I really wanted to be part of this specific discussion. So
Absolutely. And
yeah,
I
so
would
pass
like to
it over.
I would like to take a moment to thank Duke so very much for breaking me with, is it 13 subs now? Before the subathon even started tomorrow. That is far too kind. You've already broken me, and I haven't even started the subathon yet. Thank you so much, Duke. If you would like, I would absolutely love to send you a personal thank you card. You have been so kind to this community. Thank you so much.
We love Duke so much.
Absolutely. Duke has been wonderful and amazing and so supportive of everyone in this community.
Very much so.
Lovo, would you like to talk about, how have you handled any potentially conflicting views between, religious texts growing up and your own beliefs and your own identity?
Yes. So, I have read multiple books of religious text. I have been a religion nerd ever since I could remember. When I was in college for the little bit I was in college in, I took a class about Mormonism, about Islam, about stuff like that. So I have read the Quran, I've read the Book of Mormon, I've read the Bible, I've read a lot of pagan religious texts, stuff like that. Um, so I have seen a lot of different angles on a lot of things. Specifically, though, with the Bible, especially because I grew up with it when I was in, like, you know, the height of middle school age me learning about what I actually am and why I feel different and so on and so forth. The Duke again. Jeez.
Super sneaky.
Oh my gosh.
With the having read the Bible, I've read it twice in my 25 years, almost 26 years of life. There was always two, like, specific verses that I have pulled up, that have always kind of, like, somewhat put something in my arsenal when people are just like, well, asexuality isn't, like, a real thing when it comes to, like, me talking to people in my parents' church or to my parents or whoever. The specific one is First Corinthians, chapter 7, verses 6 through 9, where it is of words. Oh my gosh, it's where Paul is talking, basically proving that he is asexual himself. And the verse is, I wish that all men were as I am, but each man has his own gift from God. One has the gift, another has that. Now to the unmarried and the widows, I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried as I am. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. I've always used that verse to throw back at people, where it's just like, you don't, I mean, obviously I'm getting married, but each one as they will. It's one of those things where it's like, they talk about it in the Bible multiple times, where it's like there are people that don't view people sexually or anything like that in an allosexual way. They don't want to get married. They'd rather devote their life to God, or they rather devote their life to other things than another person in their life. Another one where it's in the book of Matthew, and they talk about eunuchs a lot, which in their term is basically what asexuals would be now. Talking about how others were made that way by men, which in the Bible sense, they're talking about castration, whereas for me now, in a modern sense, it's talking more about people that choose, just that were through trauma, chose to be asexual, or had kind of turned that way, I guess is a good way to put it. Or whereas they just have always felt that way, not made by man, just they were born that way. Like the actual verses, for there are eunuchs who were born that way, others who were made that way by men, and so others live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. The ones who can accept this should accept it. So I always like that last one, the one who can accept this should accept it, where in the sense of, like, y'all should, like, in religious people that like to fight back with the LGBTQs, I'm like, it says in the Bible, and that's not the only place where it says a phrase like that, where it's like, just accept it. There are people that are born differently. And that's just the way life is. They're not hurting you. It's their own personal life. So those are like the two specific verses that I've always kept in my mind ever since I was growing up. Now I don't need it as often. I don't identify as Christian anymore. But when my parents like to fight back or whatever, I'm just like, if you read verse X, Y, and Z, I love throwing it out at them. It's always so fun. But with that's how I kind of like handle the conflicting views with people, they never realize that I can pull out verses on them. They like to think I don't know anything. It's always fun when I get to throw back and be like, little do you know, I was in college for religious text, so I probably know more than you do.
Absolutely.
I took a lot of comparative religion classes in both I was lucky we had them in high school, and I took a few in college. And especially when Christians try to get on me, I'm like, I probably know more than you.
Yeah.
Also, do you understand how many things are based on misinterpretations and how many things are like the book of Matthew, I think it is?
Mm-hmm.
Is there more than one M gospel? I think it's Matthew.
I think it's just Matthew.
Yeah. Is an extremely Jewish text.
Yes.
like there's a lot of the ways it's really interesting if you try to think about it and think of the words and titles used and connect them to the names and titles used in Judaism that mean completely different things but are pretty much the same words. Anyway, yeah, I feel that I know it better than you.
Yeah. I always love that, especially because it's like in college I took just a special interest in Mormonism. I don't know why. It was just interesting to me. Especially being able to sit down and read the Book of Mormon. I was like, this is so interesting. Just the Book of Mormon is so similar yet so different with their own ideas interjected to it than the Christian Bible. I was just my favorite thing is we had to do a research project. So I went to school in a different state, but I came back home and I sat down with my parents' pastor and I said, I'm going to ask you some question about Mormonism. He was like, huh? But I have like a whole filmed interview with him. And, he apparently said that his roommate when he was in seminary was a Mormon guy. And I was like, that's interesting. And he was like, I don't like hate them per se, but they're wrong. And I love when pastors say that because I go, wow, that's so not what you should be saying. But anyways, that's a tyrant for not what we're talking about.
I have my own tirade about the concept of but they're wrong versus the religion flows from a stream at the top of a mountain, and where we land, where we are on the mountain means we get a different stream of it.
Yeah. So my favorite phrase that they all love to use is just they're just not on the right path in their life right now, but they'll find their way back to Jesus or to God. And I'm just like, okay, sure. Everybody has their own beliefs. And as long as they don't hurt you personally, I don't know why to say that they're wrong, but whatever. I think that's all I have to say about my conflicting views. We keep going off on little things that don't have anything to do with
all good.
Aspec.
Absolutely, all good.
It all gives us like a lot of context for the way we view our identities in our lives especially in the context again. God damn it, I want a different word, but in the context of being religious and our religious background, where I've stayed in mine and you've gone a completely different path, but still religious.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think it gives a lot of context for just how our lives have formed to who we are. And
exactly, which kind of goes into our next question.
Absolutely. So I think, we've already kind of alluded to this, but how does your religion intersect with your own orientation? Maybe we'll start with Lovo this time.
Well, I feel like this has I don't know if it has a lot to do with religion or more of the people that still go to my parents' church. But I think a lot of what I grew up witnessing and seeing within the relationships between mainly like allosexual, heterosexual couples that went to this church, it was not loving in any way, shape, or form. Except save a few couples that were like, a beacon of like, oh wow, what a healthy relationship. But a lot of them are boomers or older, and they were all in relationships that should not have happened. And so I growing up around that and witnessing that, and also dealing with some physical trauma dealt to myself from members of that church. It was always just kind of like back in my head where I'm just like, wow, these everyone here is so not as they say they are. And so with that kind of like me witnessing those relationships definitely put a lot into my own head where I'm just like, a lot of these, you know, quote unquote to the everyday eye normal couples just are not and they're very like abusive and stuff like that. And so I'm just kind of like, it made me take a step back. And I know at one point when I was, I think like 13, I was just like, I don't want to be in any relationships at all just because of how I see people act around me in their relationships. And so that kind of also got me started on the thinking about how do I actually like physically feel towards people. And then that got me started on the, you know, Aspec slope of actually I don't think I feel anything towards anybody. Though when I first started it was just asexual, and I was like, oh, I'm just, you know, I'm biromantic, I think I started pansexual, that it, you know, it was like a, you know, the whole journey on finding yourself. But a lot of me coming to terms with how I actually feel was based around my parents' church and growing up and going there, which is wild to think about.
And that kind of reminds me, I've heard it before, but the bi to pan to ace pipeline is a real thing.
I think for me it was yeah, it was bi to pan to ace, and then it was like asexual and biromantic, and then it was like demisexual biromantic, and then I'm like, no, I'm just ace arrow. I don't know. I'm not fooling anybody.
I've just added on. It started with bi now, and then it became bi plus pan, and then it became bi plus plan plus ace, and then it became bi plus plan plus ace plus arrow because of the ways that, you know, the grayness of my and weirdnesses of my arrow ace. Yeah.
It's a very common slope for all of us.
But,
to start
yeah,
with the
I added on
stuff.
instead of replacing, I added.
Honestly, you're just collecting them all.
Yes. They're Pokemon.
Absolutely.
Pokemon, gotta catch them all went through my head. Of course it did. Oh my god. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Do you have more to say before?
I do not have any
No.
more to say, so you
Okay,
are welcome
cool.
to start on yours.
Yeah, well, so just my journey really was mostly separate from my religion because, like I said, I felt very secure in that. I had all of these factors to deal with, but the community and the backing,
Ooh.
like, it was nerve-wracking to say, hey, parents, you know, how would you feel if I brought a girl to prom back when I thought I was, you know, back when I thought I was a girl. And I knew they'd be accepting, but at the same time, I felt it was always nerve-wracking that first time me say something. And then between my parents' support and just the community support and finding the right communities for me, I've been very lucky in that, and that there are a lot of like queer Jewish communities around the Boston area, you know. It's been a thing where I haven't had to kind of grapple with it. The hardest part was actually with my non-binariness, figuring out like, so when you're called up to the Torah, you are to do when you're called up for certain oh, what's the right word? Obligation is not the right word. Oh my gosh. Mitzvah is the best thing I can say. When you're called up to do things in the service, and like a very specific thing, you're called up by so-and-so, and then son of or daughter of your father's name, and depending on denomination and where your father's name and mother's name. And so realizing, oh shoot, I don't want to say Hebrew name Bat, father's name and mother's name, Bat being daughter. And luckily being able to be like, oh, this is a thing I've heard of other people doing, and it being accepted no problem, because now I say me bet from the house of. So it's more of it has been just figuring out how to fit that in with the wording and such. How do I refer to the ceremony I had when I was 13? That would normally be a bat or ben or bat mitzvah, right? How do I deal with the fact that the Hebrew is extremely gendered? Things like that. But that's mostly where I've had to grapple and figure out what I want to do, and that is a kind of separate conversation about, well, mostly about oh my god. Brain came up. That's a conversation, right? That's a conversation about transness in religion rather than aceness and erosness in religion. There we go. Sorry, brain cut out halfway through the conversation I was trying to say.
So relatable. Does that all too often to me.
Yep.
Same.
All right, so we're about to go into an ad break. This actually might be a good time to maybe go on a
Ooh,
break
yes.
if folks are, finished with their thoughts around that particular subject. Yeah,
Break
so
seems perfect.
we might actually jump into a break here and be back in 5 minutes or so?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
All right. So see you folks back in about 5 minutes. Looking forward to chatting some more. All right, welcome back.
Oh.
Thanks for the putting up with the break there. We got lots to talk about on this particular topic. So the next question I'd like to talk about is, are there any common misconceptions within the ace and or aro communities around religion that you wish to correct or clarify? I know that there's going to be lots talked about here. We will start with Lovo on this one.
Yes, I won't have the much to talk about, but there's like one little thing. I don't identify as a Christian anymore. But I know, at least in today's age, not when I was a part of the Christian community, has gotten a little slightly more LGBTQ friendly in religious spaces. When it comes to the Christian sects specifically, I know like with like the United Methodist Church, they've gotten way more accepting. A lot more pastors, especially they have a lot of non-binary pastors in the Methodist Church, which is awesome, and they're just a really great one. And I feel like a lot of people in like the Aspec community, on top of LGBTQ communities, don't realize that a lot of religious spaces in Christian sects, in other religions as well, are a lot more welcoming than they think it is, and they kind of get, the hairs on their back stand up if you mention the word religion or Christianity or whatever, and they get ready to like get ramped up and fight. And it's like, yes, there are a lot of sects like Southern Baptists that are not welcoming in any way, shape, or form. But there are a lot of other ones that are welcoming, and if you if you need that other sense of community, like another community to be a part of, like a religious community is a good one if you find one that fits well for you. And like for me, obviously, I'm more in the pagan community now than I was in Christian communities, but I have a lot of friends that are LGBTQ, that are in the Aspec community that are still Christians, and I've found those churches that are welcoming, and in Texas where I live, which is hard to do, but especially like in the cities, it's easy to find those LGBTQ Christian communities or LGBTQ whatever insert religion communities. um, so that's the one thing I like to clarify is the religious communities are accepting if you can find the right one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know you've got lots to talk about on this particular topic, Anya. So do you want to
Yeah.
go ahead?
So, religion is not a monolith. This is a thing where so it got, Lovo talked about it some there, but the big one is people use the term religion to mean multiple things, and almost always, number one, they are referring to things that are Christian. Especially in the US over other locations, but in other locations as well. And this is true partly because most US atheism is actually Christian atheism. It very much is bound and focused on the things that Christianity is. Yeah. So in Canada too, yeah. But these places that are, unfortunately Christian, as much as we're not supposed to be Christian based, we kind of are. So you see it in like when are our holidays, when do we get off for things, right? Those little bits. But yeah, the Italian Universalist, or for me, I've had way too many conversations with in multiple different locations about the fact of like, what are good works coming from a religious organization? Why are they being done? And almost like I've been told so many times, oh, it's proselytizing. Oh, there's no actual caring. I'm like, I am literally from a religion that forbids proselytizing, actively forbids it. Becoming Jewish is not an easy process. You have to really go through the learning. You have to be absolutely sure. There's a lot to do. You can't just go, I'm Jewish now. It doesn't work like that. Right? And we don't want people to, convert for just because we gave them food. In that matter, a lot of the food drives and things, like, I believe, get kind of dropped off blind, without there being like a big to-do about where it came from, right? The holiest mitzvah when it comes to charity is for it to go to people you don't know who don't know that you're the one providing it, which I wish could be done a bit more with mutual aid, but isn't that's not as feasible in certain situations. But like, giving it all for whatever reason is still a mitzvah. But the highest level is to do it with knowing that you're not getting anything out of it at all. Not even recognition from the person getting it. Right? So it's like, I almost always donate to events now anonymously because I don't really feel like getting my name read out, just as a small example. But it's just, this is a thing, and it comes up again and again. Every single trans group and every single, any sexuality or gender group I've been in, pretty much, somewhere, sometime, the word religion gets used. And then there's like the no religion. Okay, does that mean I can't wish people a happy Shabbos? I can't wish people a, happy holiday for a Jewish thing? Am I like, where are the lines? Because that's also a very common one. Oh, religion is triggering to people. Great, I get that. But again, if we could talk more about the nuances, it would be really helpful. And one of the big ones is Judeo-Christian is a lie. It is a myth. It does not exist. This is a word that gets used a lot. Abrahamic traditions as well. To lump either Judaism or Judaism and Islam in with Christianity. And actually, Judaism and Islam are extremely similar in many, 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 many ways. We both share so much with each other. We are far closer to each other than either of us are to Christianity. But I'm not sure I have ever seen a concept listed as Judeo-Christian that was actually Judaic as well. But these are the things get thrown around. Judeo-Christian, Abrahamic religions do this. all religions do this. Religion is monolith. And so there are places where just by saying I'm religious, I've already set people off. I'm already not really welcome because there's assumptions about it, what it means that I am not just religious, but I'm not, like, there's also like a lot of times where there are the exceptions for paganism and witchcraft and those, but not for, the big ones. And almost all the reasons, again, lump us in with a religion that actively persecuted us for thousands of years. So this isn't just, like I said, this isn't just an aroas thing. This is all these spaces, and in many leftist spaces in general, and many spaces that are supposed to be welcoming and safe. The moment you're like, yes, I'm a religious this thing, and especially sometimes including paganism, which Wiccan, witchcraft, all those. Sometimes including that, and sometimes if you just go, I'm a religious Christian, religious Jew, religious Muslim, you're already on the out and viewed with suspicion. And like, I will admit I have my worries sometimes when somebody comes in and goes, I'm a religious Christian, because again, there's a lot of bad blood. And a lot of the things come with Christianity. But again, Unitarian Universalist, right? Like Bumblin Busby brought up. There are people even in Christianity as well who are extremely accepting, extremely welcoming. I can't think of the right words, but like my community has worked with a bunch of other religious organizations. There's a word I'm looking for and I can't actually think of it, but like, my synagogue working with some of the churches and things to work with anti-blackness, right, to hold vigils and do all these things. So that's really my big rant, is that religion is used as a cudgel. And the term and the overall concept of religion is used as a conviction and used as a negative. There's another word I was looking for and I lost it. Rather than going, wait, how does your religion work with these things? Wait, how do you work with these things? How are you going to converse with us? And then on our side, what are we allowed to say? What can we bring up? Can I say Mazel Tov to someone as a celebration, or is that too much? Like I said, can I say, oh my gosh, it's Passover. Happy Passover. Enjoy the matzah. Sorry. The enjoy the matzah for the point record is very sarcastic from us. But that's beside the point. It's kind of that, where are our lines? And yes, right? If shitty religious people didn't make a bad name for the truly kind religious people, and if people who have been traumatized especially by Christianity and Christians, could take a moment to realize, even if there's trauma behind it, and that's part of the problem, I get it. But there's so many differences. And most of the traumatizing aspects, not all, and again, denominations matter. There are some denominations that are extremely accepting, even in Judaism. But a lot of the religious trauma that causes these lines comes from Christianity. And from religions, again, especially the Abrahamic and especially Judaism, getting lumped in with Christianity for things that don't apply. So, again, for us, Lo B'Shamayim Hi, right?
Yeah.
It's not in heaven for us. It is in sorry. Yeah, right? There's also very kind, actively practicing Christians. One of my friends who is I think at this point she's fully that she's gone fully binary into trans woman. I think. When I first met her, she was still going by they, them, and non-binary. So I'm not 100% sure. So I hope I'm getting her gender right, but she wants to be actively a practicing minister, priest, I forget, for I think is universal unitarian blah blah blah. That's one. I'm not sure, it might be a different one, where a big part of it being helping figure out how to make things comfortable again for other queer people. But just religion isn't a monolith,
No.
and the accusations most religious people get, even with Christians who are of that denomination, oftentimes it's not true for them. But for many others of us, we are being painted with the same brush as effectively as our abusers, as our persecutors. And that's honestly painful. And that's extremely alienating.
Absolutely.
And in a place where we are working for inclusivity, it kind of sucks to get excluded for things that aren't even true about what I believe. So those are that's my big rant about all of this. Yeah.
Totally understand that. And I was having a discussion yesterday with some folks, and we kind of mentioned queer folks of anybody should be accepting and understand nuance and not just paint everything with the same brush. Unfortunately, as you have talked about, the word religion is taken very negatively by many, many queer folks.
Yeah.
I wish I had more to talk about on this particular topic, but as I said, like I went to church once in my life and never, and basically grew up pretty much atheist my whole life. So I unfortunately don't have a lot to contribute to this, but I did want to bring up that particular discussion I had yesterday. It's very, very, I think, important to mention.
Yep. And I will say also right now it's especially fraught being like, I am Jewish because of, well, it's always been a case of you say you're Jewish and people ask you about IP. I'm not going to fully say the words, just going to leave it there.
Yeah.
Even more so now.
Absolutely.
And it's a very difficult space to navigate in many ways. That is hard to talk about because there's a lot of nuance that people don't know the history behind, but also there's a lot of trying to figure out what I've been taught that's wrong or not wrong.
Yeah.
Where are the things, there's places where I'm sure of and places I'm not, but like that's one of the things now is it's even harder sometimes because of that is used immediately as well, where do you stand on this? You have to declare it to be a good Jew. Which, those words. Sorry.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just gave myself a start by using that phrase. Whoa.
Absolutely.
But yeah. So just wanted to highlight that extra little piece that's going on right now on top of it.
For sure. Absolutely.
All right. Those are my rants. That's my
very important to talk
answer.
about. And very important to acknowledge.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for the space to let me do that.
Absolutely. It's really important, especially I've got my unfortunate blind spots, not growing up in a religious community. And unfortunately, I myself have developed those blind spots that when I see the word religion, I think the horrible ones that have ruined it for everyone. So I've got blind spots I need to work on myself with regards to that. So we've talked about a lot here today, and I think we're actually already coming up on the final question of the day. Believe it or not. And this one is, what do you wish allosexual individuals knew about religious aces and aros? I'll give Lovo the start on this one to give you a break from talking there, Anya.
Thank you.
Um, with this one, it's more going to come from my pagan perspective. I know within the pagan community, like, or at least on like the outside of people looking into the pagan community, they view paganism, Wiccans as a very like sexual beings for some reason. I blame Hollywood, but they are like, oh, you're a witch, you know. All the like ideals of like that comes into Hollywood, the sexy witch that, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Um so like a lot of the times when I've said that in the past, they're just like, "Oh, you like worship Aphrodite, like, you're so like sex-based focused, right? That's a lot in your practice." And it's like for people that even don't know a lot about paganism, sometimes that comes off as very like brash. It's usually the ones that say that are the ones that, have that Hollywood ideal in their brain, or like, the idealized version of paganism and Wiccan. Um and it's it's always so just I get taken aback every time that happens to me, which has happened more often than you would think. Which it still surprises me, where I'm just like, are y'all really that like, brainwashed to think that people in these communities only think of one thing and one thing only? Whereas I know personally a lot of people that are Aspec and are pagan because we've found a lot of our deities have, are either in that kind of like world of like Aspec, shows signs of it, or they are very supportive of that like community. So a lot of times when I get confronted with that by mainly allosexuals, mainly people that don't know anything about paganism and stuff like that, I just kind of like I clam up a little bit, and it's just kind of like, that's just it's very very abrasive. And it's one of those things where it's like I wish people would get rid of that Hollywood idea of pagans and witches and stuff like that, and realize that it's a very comforting group, a comforting mindset of paganism. Like to me, like my deities and stuff like that are like a little community, a support community for me. They help me through a lot of things on top of like covens as well, which is another aspect of community in it. And so I guess that's the one thing that I say about that to allosexuals about pagan aces and aros, is that it's a comforting thing. There's nothing to do with sex. I don't, Aphrodite is one of my deities, but she is not inherently a sexual being, which is what people think of her if they don't know anything about like that aspect of the Greek deities and stuff like that. Anyways, that's as much of a tyrant I will go on that.
Absolutely, and I do want to acknowledge what is it, Bodhi Savta. I am so sorry for butchering your name. They mentioned, that they are Buddhist, and that for them is, kind of the perfect place or the perfect blend for them as an Aroace individual.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely do agree. It's simply people not wanting to, or simply choosing not to understand what's in front of them. And we've talked about it time and time again, the assumptions of allonormativity, amatonormativity, all the ativities, and that seems to apply here again in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And yeah, it's not a monolith, and that's one of the big focuses of this podcast, is to talk about the fact that asexuality and aromanticism are not a monolith. There's so much intersectionality. There's so many different perspectives and so many different experiences that all fall under the umbrella of asexuality, the umbrella of aromanticism, and you can't talk about this in any simple way because the identities are so diverse within the umbrellas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, taking this intersectional approach to talking about asexuality and aromanticism is so incredibly important for so many reasons. I'll just let this ad break finish before we jump on to Anya here.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
almost done. It's about 18
Yep.
seconds left.
Also, really quick, while you say it, I saw your thing of stickers for your
Oh yeah,
subathon, birthday subathon. I know those stickers. Those look
Yeah.
extremely familiar.
yeah.
Right.
You probably might have got them in a similar place.
Very possibly. Fairly cheap.
Yeah. We
Yep.
also have this
Likely.
ready to go for tomorrow. Spicy ramen.
Yep. Yeah, I saw the picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Whereas
So
I'm trying
I
to decide if
will-
I should do one giant long horror stream to combine all of the horror games I need to play for the for
And
my
on
reward.
that note,
But anyways,
we've actually already unlocked 2 milestones for this month
oh my god, that's
ahead of the
awesome.
start of the subathon. So
That's epic.
next stream, chat will be composing a tweet for me. It will have to be TOS friendly and safe for work.
Oh gosh.
And we've also unlocked a collab Squirtle stream. So it's basically a Wordle-like game, but Pokemon themed, as you can guess. And there's 2 modes. You have to guess the Pokemon based on, the, kind of Wordle-like. Or there's also a mode where you have to guess the Pokemon based on a set of stats that are given. So I'm going to be playing this with a good friend of mine at some point. But we've already unlocked Chat Composes a Tweet, and we've unlocked the collab Squirtle stream before the start of the subathon even. That is absolutely wild.
That's epic. That's so cool.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So would you like to speak on this particular topic, Anya?
Yeah, I'm just trying to put my thoughts together. Because I said a lot of it in the misconceptions part.
Yeah.
And so it's just that I guess so there is that community aspect. For me, community is everything in like every aspect of what I do. It is in my bones, it is in my blood, it is in my brain. It's like the best way I can describe it. It is what I was raised with. It is what I believe. Like I typically say my spirituality is actually in in community and in other people as much as anything else. Because again, atheist slash agnostic, I have no fucking clue what I believe sometimes. I have a lot of like I refuse like if there is a God, I don't believe in these aspects. I don't believe this or that about it. But that's a big is there one? I don't know. Right? The community is everything. And so just it's that we have already oftentimes if it's something sorry, I have thoughts and I'm having trouble placing them somewhat.
That's okay.
I guess the biggest one is just that we exist. We're not a contradiction, I guess.
Absolutely.
That also we're not likely to preach about either side of things, being religious or being races. We'll talk about it, we'll discuss it as desired. and in spaces like this. But we're not about to try to convince people to become religious just because we are, for one thing. And people within our religion, we're not going to try to, I don't know. I can't imagine trying to convince somebody that they need to be ace or aro. I don't think it works that way.
No.
You know, but just we're here, we exist, we belong in the community on both sides of things. We belong in the religious community, we belong in the ace-aro community. And it's neither side of it is a contradiction. And if we're here, we're religious, and this is a thing we know about ourselves. If there's grappling to do, if there is any inconsistencies with whatever our specific religion looks like, we've already grappled and worked with it and found how it works for us. So, yeah, I think that's my big one. Just,
Absolutely.
hi, we're here.
Exactly. And friendship and community are so important. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, like Yom Kippur is coming up, so I'm pretty sure the community rant is coming at some point. Very, very, very short version. Is that so? Yom Kippur is our Day of Atonement, and it's one of our most sacred days. And we're doing the when we're doing the confessions. None of these words really translate in English to the way that they typically hit Christian majority societal brains. So confessions is like weird doesn't quite translate to what anyone is going to take it as for the most part. So just with that grain of salt. But as we're saying them, as we're kind of knocking on our hearts, there's a tradition to kind of pound your chest. And since one of my rabbis said it's pounding on your hearts to open it, I've never been able to forget that one. And it changed my concept of it's not a punishment, it's an opening. But we're saying, we did this, we did this, we did this. Every single quote unquote confession is plural, is communal. And it's acknowledging that as a community, we make mistakes and need to fix them as a community, as well as as individuals. And that is tied into me with Judaism. That's, again, this is what I grew up with. This is how my brain thinks. This is how, my concept of repentance, again, such a terrible word for what I'm actually meaning, but is very tied up, and it's very tied up in how I do a lot of things, even in the streamer space and the ace spaces and aero spaces. But yeah, everything is community. So 100% that.
So true. And, community and friendship have been so important for me in finding, these Arrow and Ace spaces locally on the internet and streaming. They've been so important for my personal growth the last 7 or 8 years in particular, once I really came to understand my own Arrow Ace identities and really start exploring that identity more. After that, I finally figured out, I'm non-binary. I didn't have the language or had really given it much thought prior to that. And it's these communities that have allowed me to become comfortable and explore things that would never have been comfortable exploring before. So it is so important on so many levels.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to take a moment to thank both Lovo and Anya so much for chatting today, because this is not a topic I had any idea about myself. I could not have done this without your contributions today at all. So thank you so much again. I would like to shout both of you out. Please go give both Anya a follow and Lovo a follow. They are wonderful streamers and wonderful folks. And thank you again for being here today.
Thank
you
you
for
again
having
for
us.
having us.
It was wonderful chatting with you both. So this has been episode 7 of the Aspec podcast. Episode 8 will be next weekend, and we'll be chatting about, I think, neurodivergence
Ooh,
and its
excellent.
intersectionality
Ooh,
with
that's gonna be
There's
fun.
so much overlap
absolutely,
there.
absolutely.